My name is Ethan Miller, and I'm 30 years old. Most days, you'd find me glued to my computer screen, lost in a world of pixels and vectors. Freelance graphic design. Sounds chill, right? It is, mostly. I work from home, so no annoying small talk, no crowded commutes. Just me, my old apartment out in the sticks, and the endless hum of my PC. It's peaceful, or at least I tell myself it is. I live alone. Always have, really. My place is one of those classic suburban boxes, built back when bell-bottoms were cool and avocado green kitchens were a thing. Creaky floorboards, a funny smell in the pantry, and walls that probably have more stories than I do. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine. And in here, everything makes sense. Or I make sense of everything. That's my thing. Logic, science, a good, solid explanation for why things are the way they are, even for my own weird quirks. Like, before I leave any room, I tap the wall next to the door, 3 times, lightly, with my middle knuckle. It's just something I do. If I don't, this gnawing feeling creeps up on me. My stomach clenches, my chest gets tight. It's like a cold dread settling deep in my bones, whispering that something bad is gonna happen, something awful. So I tap, always. It's my little ritual, my own little safeguard. I've got it all figured out, of course. Back when I was 7, my family moved from our old house to this apartment. Big change for a kid, you know. New place, new everything. Psychologists say kids can develop coping mechanisms during stressful times. Mine must have been this. A mild form of OCD, maybe? Or just a way for my kid brain to feel like I had some control when everything else was chaos. A self-soothing thing. That's what I've always told myself. A way to calm that vague, buzzing anxiety that lives somewhere deep inside me, always lurking, even when there's nothing specific to be scared of. Just general unease, bottled up and quieted by 3 little taps. Normal stuff, really. Just a part of Ethan. Today started like any other. Sunlight, what little of it managed to peek through the overgrown oak trees outside, filtered into my makeshift office. My fingers danced over the mouse, crafting logos, tweaking colors, bringing abstract ideas to life on a glowing screen. Hours melted away. I usually just grab whatever's closest for lunch, a stale cracker, half a banana, whatever, too engrossed to properly eat. That's the beauty of freelance, I guess. No one to tell me I'm being an unhealthy hermit. Eventually, my bladder protested, a stark reminder that even I wasn't entirely a digital being. I pushed back my chair, stretching until my back popped, a satisfying crack. Time to hit the bathroom. I walked towards the door, my mind still half stuck on a gradient problem. Just as my hand reached for the doorknob, I paused. Habit, automatic. My eyes flickered to the wall, that dingy off-white patch next to the frame. I lifted my right hand, middle knuckle slightly extended. Tap, tap, tap. 3 gentle, distinct sounds, dry and hollow, echoed in the quiet space. The apartment usually just absorbed sound, but those taps, they felt almost loud in the silence. A shiver, not of cold, but something else, ran down my spine, quickly followed by a rush of ease. My shoulders dropped a fraction, my jaw unclenched, that little knot in my stomach loosened. All right, another day safe, I mumbled to myself, a faint exhale leaving my lips. Damn it, a guy's gotta have his routines, right? That's how it works. That's how it's always worked. The taps are the key. They're the lock. They seal away whatever bad juju tries to sneak in. I remember it clearly, or at least what I think I remember. 7 years old, sitting on a pile of boxes, watching Mom and Dad argue about where the sofa should go. Everything felt upside down. That's when it started. Just a little kid, trying to make sense of a new, strange world. Building my own little fortress of habits. A defense mechanism. Simple, logical. Later that evening, the blue light of my monitor was the only thing illuminating the room. I was deep in the zone, tweaking an infographic for a tech startup. Hours had flown by. My eyes were burning and my stomach was rumbling something fierce. Time for a late dinner. Or, well, another pathetic attempt at one. I stood up, stretched again, and headed for the kitchen. My mind was still buzzing with deadlines and color palettes. I pushed open the door to my office, my foot already halfway out into the hallway. Then it hit me, like a sudden plunge into ice water. The air around me felt wrong. It wasn't cold, not really, but a wave of something heavy, something off, washed over me. My breath hitched. My heart started thumping, a frantic drum against my ribs. I stopped dead in my tracks. My eyes darted back to the wall, glaring at the empty space beside the door. No taps, no taps, no taps. My blood ran cold. The silence in the apartment suddenly felt like it was pressing in on me, suffocating. My hands started to tremble, just slightly at first, then a full-blown shake. This wasn't just anxiety, this was dread. A premonition so sharp it felt physical, like a razor blade sliding under my skin. Something was coming, something awful, because I hadn't tapped. Shit, I whispered, the word barely escaping my throat. My body, rigid and tense, spun around. I stumbled back towards the wall, my hand already extending, almost clawing at the empty space. I pressed my middle knuckle against the dingy paint. Tap, tap, tap. 3 quick, desperate knocks, almost too hard. The sound was still hollow, dry, but this time it felt more like a frantic plea than a calm ritual. I waited. My chest heaved. I squeezed my eyes shut, willing the feeling away. For a long moment, nothing. Then, slowly, painfully slowly, that intense, gut-wrenching dread began to recede. The tension eased out of my shoulders, out of my jaw. My breathing started to even out. The air didn't feel quite so heavy anymore. I opened my eyes. Things felt right again. Not great, but safe enough. For now. Damn it, Ethan, don't ever forget that, I muttered, my voice shaky. Never. Just as a wave of relief washed over me, a tiny, almost imperceptible sound reached my ears. A faint scritch-scratch, like something very small, very light, dragging itself across old wood. Or maybe rubbing against the plaster. It came from the other side of that very wall, the one I'd just tapped. My muscles tensed again, all the relief I'd just felt draining away like bathwater. My head snapped to the wall. I strained my ears, holding my breath, listening so hard I thought my eardrums might pop. Nothing. Only the hum of the fridge from the kitchen. The silence of the apartment was back, thicker now, somehow deeper. What the hell was that? I mumbled, a cold shiver tracing a path down my spine, raising goosebumps on my arms. I waited. A minute passed, 2. Still nothing. Just the quiet. Must be the old house, I tried to rationalize, my voice a little too loud in the stillness. Old wood settling. Or, just some damn mice. Happens. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the lingering unease. My heart was still doing a frantic little jig in my chest, a reminder that it wasn't just the old house. It was more. But I'd tapped. I'd done the taps. It had to be okay. It had to be. Probably just my imagination, damn it, I whispered, forcing myself to turn away from the wall. I didn't look back, just kept walking, a little faster than before, towards the kitchen, deliberately ignoring the feeling that maybe, just maybe, I hadn't imagined it at all, and that the quiet wasn't quite as empty as it seemed. Man, after that whole no-tap thing last night, I gotta admit, my usual mild anxiety, just a quirk, felt, well, less mild, and less like a quirk, more like a heavy blanket someone threw over my head in a dark room. My logical brain, the one that usually has an answer for everything, was starting to stutter. It was still trying to say, Ethan, it's just stress, buddy. You're overtired, isolated. It's all in your head. But there was this tiny, cold whisper that kept saying, is it though? Really?
And that scritch-scratch, it was still doing laps in my head. Old house? Mice? Yeah, right. My apartment's a concrete box, mostly. Not exactly prime mouse real estate. But I needed a reason, any reason, to shove that thought back into the dark corner it crawled out of. Being alone all the time, it used to be my superpower. No distractions, no annoying colleagues. Just me, my screens, and my deadlines. Peaceful, like I said. But now it felt like I was stuck in a soundproof box. Just me and my own messed up thoughts, amplified and echoing. It felt less like safety, and more like a trap. The more I tried to push away the weirdness, the more it clung to me, a sticky film of unease.
I found myself Googling things late at night. Old house noises, settling sounds. Then, before I even knew what I was typing, poltergeist, haunted apartment signs. My thumb hovered over what to do if your house is haunted. But then I'd snap back, clear my search history like a maniac, and type in symptoms of delusion, anxiety-induced hallucinations. See? Still trying to be the rational guy, always. But my gut was having none of it. So, the next morning, I decided to do something about it. Fight fire with ignoring fire. Ethan, you're a grown man, I told myself, staring hard at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. My eyes were a little bloodshot, my usual designer pallor a shade paler. This is a habit, a bad habit. You can break it. It was like giving myself a pep talk for skydiving, but the sky was my hallway and the ground was, well, I didn't want to think about the ground. I made myself a quick breakfast, some sad, cold cereal and milk. My stomach was doing a tight little twist, but I forced it down. Time to head to the living room, get some work done. It was like walking the plank. My heart hammered against my ribs, each beat a frantic drum. My hands, dude, they were shaking. Not a lot, but enough that I noticed the spoon rattling a bit against the ceramic bowl. I put it down. I got up from the kitchen table. Okay, deep breath. I walked towards the living room door, the one I usually tap before I step through. My right hand, it felt heavy, like it wanted to just lift up and do it. The muscles in my arm were practically twitching. Every fiber of my being was screaming at me to tap. Just 3 taps, Ethan, then everything's fine, safe. But I clenched my fist, shoved it into my pocket. Nope, I muttered under my breath, my voice rough. Not today, old friend. I stepped across the threshold. Nothing. My body braced, waiting for that cold wave of dread, that gut punch of impending doom. It didn't come. Not immediately, anyway. A tiny spark of triumph flared in my chest. See? Just a habit, all in your head. I even managed a small, shaky smile. I went and sat down at my desk, tried to focus on a new client brief, but my mind was everywhere. It was like 1,000 tiny little alarm bells ringing, just out of earshot. Every creak of the old house, every gust of wind against the window felt like a direct warning. My brain was conjuring up all sorts of scenarios. A car crash outside, my laptop shorting out and electrocuting me, the ceiling collapsing. Dumb, I know, totally irrational, but they felt so damn real. It was the same vague, awful feeling as forgetting to tap, but spread out, simmering under my skin. Just as I was trying to convince myself I'd won, that I was a rational, habit-breaking champion, there was a sudden thump from the kitchen. I jumped so hard my chair nearly tipped over. My heart immediately went into overdrive, doing the frantic drum solo again. "What the hell?" I whispered, my voice barely a thread. I slowly, cautiously walked back to the kitchen. My eyes darted around, trying to pinpoint the source. There it was. On the floor, next to the bookshelf I have above the sink, lay one of my old cookbooks, a hefty one too, all battered and covered in grease stains from years of failed cooking attempts. It had been sitting there for months, probably years, never moved, never so much as slid an inch. Now it was just lying there, flat on its face. My breath caught in my throat. I stared at it.
No open window, no draft, nothing. Just a heavy, silent book on the floor. "Damn it, old house," I heard myself mumble, the words hollow, trying to find a logical explanation. Just settling, or maybe a cat if I had one, or vibration from a truck outside. I picked it up, my hands still a little shaky, and put it back on the shelf. I even pushed it firmly against the other books, like that would prevent any further spontaneous book dropping. Then, just as I was turning to leave, my eyes fell on the half-eaten bowl of cereal still on the table, and the glass of water. It was sitting there innocently, but then the water in it rippled. Just a tiny, almost imperceptible tremor. Like a small pebble had dropped in it. My eyes locked onto it. I held my breath. And then, with a soft clink that sounded impossibly loud in the quiet kitchen, the glass slowly, agonizingly slowly, started to slide. It didn't tip.
It just slid, inch by agonizing inch, across the table until it reached the edge. And then it toppled. Shatter! Water, milk, and cereal splattered across the linoleum floor. The sound of the glass breaking made me jump back, hitting the counter with a painful thud. My whole body seized up. My teeth were clenched so hard my jaw ached. I stammered, staring at the mess. The water formed a dark puddle, reflecting the dim kitchen light like a broken mirror. My hands flew up to cover my mouth, trying to stifle the sound of my own ragged breathing. What the actual hell? My logical brain was on life support now. Earthquake? No, felt nothing. Just bad luck? A faulty table? But the cold dread that had receded earlier now rushed back with a vengeance, thick and suffocating. It wasn't a guess anymore. It was a certainty. Something was here. Something was messing with me. I scrambled to clean it up, my movements jerky and frantic. My heart was pounding like a drum solo gone wild, echoing in my ears. I didn't even care about the mess anymore, just the desperate need to do something, anything to regain a semblance of control. As I wiped up the spilled water, my eyes kept flicking to the wall, that dingy, off-white wall beside the living room door. The wall I hadn't tapped. That night was a mess. I couldn't focus on work. Every shadow danced. Every creak was a monstrous footstep. I tried to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. My mind was racing, replaying the book, the glass, the scritch-scratch. The words poltergeist and haunted kept flashing in my head, now without me censoring them. But then, almost immediately, delusion, hallucination, mental break. My brain was a battlefield, logic fighting a losing war against pure, unadulterated fear. I finally drifted off sometime after 3 a.m., exhausted, my body heavy with a tension headache. But sleep brought no peace. Instead, I was somewhere else. A long, dark corridor. Not my apartment, definitely not. This place felt ancient, decaying. The air was thick with dust and a smell like damp earth and something sweet, sickly. The walls were peeling, revealing layers of faded wallpaper beneath. Moonlight, a cold, silvery blade, cut through a distant window, painting ghostly patterns on the floor. I was standing in the middle of it, alone, but not alone. I felt eyes, everywhere. Then it started, a faint, rhythmic sound. Tap, tap, tap. It wasn't me. It wasn't my habit. It was coming from somewhere behind a crumbling section of wall, further down the corridor. My blood ran cold. My own ritual, mimicked. And then, from the other side of the wall, even closer to me, a faint thump. Thump, thump. Answering, responding. My heart was doing its frantic thing again, slamming against my ribs. I wanted to run, but my feet were glued to the decaying floorboards. The tapping continued, a morbid conversation between two unseen entities. Tap, 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 thump, thump. And then I felt it. A touch. Cold, so cold it burned. A tiny hand, bony and fragile, reached out from the darkness beside me and brushed against my ankle. It was a feather-light touch, but it sent a shockwave of ice through my entire body. I wanted to scream, but my throat was a stone. I bolted upright in bed, eyes wide open, gasping for air. My sheets were tangled around me, damp with sweat. My heart felt like it was going to burst out of my chest, a frenzied drum against my ribs. It took me a full minute, maybe more, to realize I was in my own bed, in my own damn apartment. The corridor was gone, the cold touch, just a dream. Just a dream, I repeated, my voice hoarse, trying to convince myself. But the image of that tiny hand, the bone-chilling cold, it was seared into my mind. And the tapping, the answering tapping. I spent the next few hours, or what felt like days, in front of my computer again. This time, no attempts to rationalize. I went straight for the deep end. Poltergeist activity, ghostly touching, child ghost dreams. The algorithms loved me, I guess, fed me all sorts of forums, shaky YouTube videos, personal anecdotes. I devoured them, desperate for anything that made sense. But then the old habit kicked in. My fingers typed, almost automatically, early signs of psychosis, schizophrenia symptoms. See, still holding on to the edge of sanity, even when it was crumbling all around me. I couldn't accept it. I wouldn't accept it. Finally, the morning light, thin and watery, began to filter through my windows. It brought a flimsy shield of normalcy, pushing back the shadows just a little. I dragged myself out of bed, my body aching from the tension and lack of sleep. I needed coffee, strong, industrial strength. I walked into the living room, my gaze, against my will, drifting towards that wall. The one beside the living room door, the one where I do my ritual, the one where I heard the scratch, and the one I deliberately didn't tap yesterday. I stood there, staring at it, the off-white paint, dingy and chipped in places. And then I saw it, a faint, almost invisible smudge, right there, where my middle knuckle usually makes contact. It was a ghost of a mark, worn down over years of repeated, unconscious actions. My own personal signature on the wall, a testament to a habit I'd convinced myself was just a quirk. I raised my right hand, my middle knuckle slightly extended, just like always. My fingers were trembling. I brought it closer to the wall, then slowly, gently, stroked the faded mark with my fingertip. It felt smooth, worn down. The moment my finger left the wall, the lights in the room flickered, once, twice, then, with a soft click, they died. Total darkness. The dim morning light from the windows wasn't enough to cut through the sudden, absolute blackness of the apartment. My breath hitched, my heart lurched. And then, from inside the wall, right where my finger had just been, came a light, distinct tap. It wasn't a scratch. It wasn't the settling of old wood. It wasn't a mouse. It was a tap, 3 of them. Tap, tap, tap. Exactly like mine. "Motherfucker!" I yelled, my voice cracking, a raw, primal sound of pure terror. I stumbled backward, my leg hitting the leg of the nearest chair. I lost my balance and crashed to the floor, my hands scrabbling wildly in the dark. My heart felt like it was going to explode out of my chest, ripping through my ribs. This wasn't a dream. This wasn't my imagination. This wasn't a hallucination. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers clumsy with fear. It took me a frantic second to find it, another to hit the power button. The screen flashed to life, a blinding rectangle of light in the overwhelming darkness. I swung the phone up, pointing its weak beam straight at the wall. Just as the light hit the spot, the entire room went dark again. Not the lights flickering out, but the phone's flashlight, dead. The screen went black. I was left in absolute darkness and silence. A silence that pressed in, heavier and colder than any darkness could be. That familiar wave of dread hit me, but this time it brought something new. A sensation of being watched, closely, intently, from inside that wall. A cold, unblinking gaze fixed right on me. I couldn't rationalize this, not anymore. My fortress of logic had crumbled, and I was trapped inside its ruins, with something else, something that had just tapped back. "Motherfucker!" I'd screamed. My voice, man, it was just raw, like something ripped out of my throat. I was on the floor, scrambling, clawing at the dark, my phone dead in my hand. That tap, tap, tap from inside the wall, it wasn't just a noise, it was a reply. A mocking, chilling reply. And the darkness, dude, it was thick, heavy, like a wet blanket thrown over my head. My heart was doing a full-on drum solo, trying to break out of my ribs. This wasn't some creaking house. This wasn't anxiety. This wasn't my damn imagination. It was there, inside that wall, watching. I pushed myself up, shaking like a leaf. My legs felt like jelly. Every muscle screamed. I stumbled my way to the living room window, fumbling for the curtains. Just a sliver of morning light, please. Just a damn sliver. Anything to break this suffocating black. When I finally yanked them open, the thin, gray dawn light didn't help much. It just made the shadows look deeper, more alive. I stood there, gasping, leaning against the cold glass. My mind was just scrambled. It wasn't fighting anymore. Logic had packed its bags and ghosted. What was left was this cold, hard knot of fear in my gut, and this creeping, crawling realization that everything I thought I knew, everything I told myself, was a lie. A big, fat, comforting lie I'd built to keep myself from seeing this. I didn't even try to turn on the lights, didn't want to. It felt like if I did, whatever was in that wall would just laugh. Or maybe it would just be gone, and I'd be back to square one, trying to explain away the unexplainable. And I couldn't do that anymore. I just couldn't. Days blurred into a haze after that. Sleep was a joke, a sick, twisted joke, filled with dreams of dark corridors and tiny, cold hands. The scritch-scratch came back, of course, louder now, more insistent. Sometimes it felt like it was right behind my head, no matter where I was in the apartment. Sometimes it was rhythmic, sometimes frantic, like something trying to claw its way out. And I swore, I absolutely swore, I could hear a faint, almost childlike giggle mixed in with it. Just a quick, breathless sound that would vanish the moment I strained to hear it. I barely ate. Work? Forget it. My clients were probably wondering if I'd been abducted by aliens, or maybe just went off the grid completely. My apartment, once my sanctuary, was now a cage. Every shadow, every creak, every shift in the air felt like a threat. My eyes were glued to that damn wall, always. Even when I was facing away, I felt its presence, a cold spot on my back. I was losing it. I knew I was losing it. The rational Ethan was long gone, replaced by this wired, terrified husk. I kept muttering to myself, asking questions that had no answers. What is it? What does it want? Why me? My voice was getting raspy, probably from talking to myself in whispers all the time. Then, out of nowhere, my phone rang. I nearly dropped it. Who the hell would call me? I hadn't talked to anyone in weeks, days. Time was a blur. It was an unfamiliar number. I stared at it, my thumb hovering over the answer button. Part of me wanted to just ignore it, retreat further into my terror. But another part, a small, desperate part, yearned for a connection. Any connection that wasn't this.
I answered it. "Hello?" My voice sounded like rusty hinges. "Ethan, is that you, sweetheart? It's your Aunt Martha." Aunt Martha? Jesus, I hadn't talked to her in ages. Not since, well, I couldn't even remember the last time. She lived a few states away, a sweet old lady who used to bake the best apple pies. "Aunt Martha? Hey, yeah, it's me." I tried to sound normal, tried to push down the frantic drum solo in my chest. It wasn't working. "Oh, thank goodness. I was worried. You didn't answer my texts. Your mother said you haven't been returning her calls either. Everything all right, dear?" Her voice was warm, a blast from a past I barely remembered. Yeah, everything's fine, Aunt. Just busy with work, you know, deadlines." I heard myself lie, and it tasted like ash. "Well, that's good. Listen, I'm actually passing through your city tomorrow, just for a quick stopover before I head further north. Thought I'd pop by, see your place, say hello in person. Would that be all right?" My blood ran cold again, but for a different reason. Someone coming here? To my apartment? The one with the wall that taps back? The one that's watched by whatever is in there? "Oh, tomorrow, Aunt. That's a bit sudden, isn't it?" I tried to find an excuse, any excuse. My brain felt like it was wading through thick mud. "Nonsense, sweetheart. Just for a few hours. I'll bring some of my famous lemon bars. Your mother said you've been living in that apartment for years now, all by yourself. It's about time your old aunt came to check on you, isn't it?" She chuckled, a gentle sound that did nothing to ease the dread pooling in my stomach. I couldn't say no, not to Aunt Martha. She was family, and a part of me, a tiny, buried part, was screaming for someone, anyone, to come and break this isolation, even if it meant risking everything. "Okay, Aunt. Yeah, that sounds great. Come on over." I swallowed hard, feeling like I'd just signed my own death warrant. "Wonderful. See you around noon then, dear. Don't fuss, just a quick visit." She hung up before I could back out. I stared at my phone. Then, slowly, my eyes drifted back to the wall. It was still there, of course, silent now, waiting for someone else to witness its performance. My stomach churned. This was going to be a disaster. Noon came, a gray, anxious kind of noon. I'd tried to clean up a bit, make the apartment look less like a madman's lair, but the heavy atmosphere, the cold dread, it was impossible to scrub away. I even considered putting a blanket over that wall. Ridiculous, I know, but the thought had crossed my mind. The doorbell rang. I jumped.
My heart was in my throat. I took a deep, shaky breath, tried to plaster on a normal human smile, and opened the door. Aunt Martha stood there, a small, elegant woman with kind eyes and silver hair, holding a Tupperware container. She smiled warmly. "Ethan, darling, look at you, all grown up." She hugged me, a surprisingly firm hug that smelled of lavender and old books. "Hi, Aunt Martha," I mumbled, feeling like a little kid again. I let her in, my eyes darting nervously around the living room, specifically avoiding the wall. She looked around, her eyes sweeping over the worn furniture, the stacks of books, the general clutter of a bachelor pad. Her smile softened. "This apartment, still the same, isn't it, Ethan? Exactly as I remember it. Even that little scuff mark on the wall there." She gestured vaguely towards the wall. My blood ran cold. She remembered the scuff mark? How? "Yeah, been here a while," I managed. "It has, hasn't it? Brings back memories. Been a long time since I was here last year. Must be, 20 years? More?" She sighed softly, a faraway look in her eyes. We sat down, tried to make small talk. She asked about my work, my health, my non-existent social life. I gave vague answers, my mind constantly on edge, listening, waiting. Every creak of the floorboards, every settling sound of the old building made me flinch. I felt her eyes on me sometimes, a gentle, knowing gaze that unnerved me more than any outright question. After what felt like an eternity, Aunt Martha stood up. "Well, darling, I really must be going. Got a long drive ahead of me." A wave of relief, cold and sharp, washed over me. She was leaving. Thank God. I walked her to the door. Just as she reached the threshold, I felt it, that familiar pull. My right hand, almost on its own, started to lift. My middle knuckle extended, drawn to the wall beside the door. It was an instinct, a muscle memory so deeply ingrained it bypassed conscious thought. Tap, tap. 3 soft, rhythmic taps against the dingy, off-white paint. The sound echoed in the sudden, heavy silence of the apartment. It felt wrong, exposed. I pulled my hand back, feeling a blush creep up my neck. Damn it, Ethan, not now. I turned, a forced, apologetic smile on my face, ready to make some lame excuse about habits. Aunt Martha was looking at me. Her smile was still gentle, but it had this far-away quality, like she was looking through me, into something very, very old. And there was a hint of something else in her eyes. Pity? Sadness? "You still do that, Ethan," she said, her voice soft, almost a whisper. My forced smile faltered. Do what, Aunt?" She chuckled softly, a wistful sound. "That tapping, on the wall. I remember you started that in the old house, right after we knew little Susie wasn't there anymore. I remember how pitiful she was." The words hit me like a physical blow. Susie? Pitiful? Calling her out of the wall? My head snapped towards Aunt Martha, then back to the wall, then back to her. My jaw hung open. My voice, when it came, was a choked, ragged sound. "Susie is... who? What kid, Aunt? I'm an only child. I don't have a sister. What old house are you even talking about?" Every single rationalization, every carefully constructed memory, every explanation I'd clung to for decades, it all imploded in that one terrifying moment. The floor felt like it was crumbling beneath my feet. My reality, the one I'd built so meticulously, dissolved into a terrifying, unfamiliar void. And that's when it happened. As Martha said, like you wanted to call her out of the wall, my eyes, completely on their own, whipped to that wall. The one I'd just tapped, the one that had tapped back. And for just a split second, a flicker, I saw it. A faint, blurry reflection, like a ghost in old glass. A child's face, tiny, with big, round eyes. And it wasn't scared, not at all. It was peeking out from inside the wall. And on that face, just for a millisecond before it vanished, was a smile. A mischievous, almost satisfied smile. Like it had been waiting, like it had just won. I gasped, a small, choked sound. My body locked up. My eyes burned, trying to force the image back, to rationalize it, to tell myself it was just a trick of the light, a hallucination. But I saw it. I saw it. I stumbled forward, my trembling fingers reaching out, pressing against the cold, unyielding surface of the wall. "Susie," I whispered, my voice barely audible, a pathetic plea. "What the fuck, Susie? Who is that?" The cold on the wall seeped into my fingertips, not just the temperature of the plaster, but something deeper, colder, ancient. It felt like it was trying to whisper something to me, something terrible. Aunt Martha sighed, a soft, weary sound that broke through my panic. She shook her head gently. Her eyes, usually so kind, held a deep, unreadable sadness, almost a weariness. "Your mom said you were too young to remember, dear. Said we shouldn't ever talk about it, so we never did. Poor thing." She just trailed off, her gaze still fixed on the wall for a moment. Then she looked at me with that same distant, pitying look. She didn't say another word, just turned, opened the door, and walked out. The gentle click of the door closing behind her echoed in the now cavernous silence of my apartment. I was left alone, again, but this time it was different. The silence wasn't empty. It was filled with a terrifying new understanding. Susie, a child, pitiful, inside the wall. The question screamed in my head, a chaotic symphony of terror. Who was Susie? What happened to her? Why did I start tapping for her? Was she not there anymore because she was gone? Or not there anymore because she was just out of reach, locked away? And I'd been tapping, calling, all these years. The cold from the wall spread through my arm, reaching my chest, chilling me to the bone. That mischievous, satisfied smile, it wasn't just my imagination. It wasn't just a habit. It was a connection. And whatever was behind that wall, it knew. It knew I had just seen it. It knew I was finally remembering. And the thought, cold and heavy as a tombstone, pressed down on me. If my habit wasn't a coping mechanism, a way to soothe myself, then what the hell was it? I stood there, trembling, my hand pressed against the cold wall, feeling its silent, triumphant whisper. The truth had burst out of a sealed, forgotten box, and it was far more monstrous than any delusion. It was a living, breathing nightmare, and it had a name, Susie, and she was here, still, waiting.